Hello, I'm Bjorn and I do movies, and welcome to the first act of the Suicide Squad Part 5, the finale to my entire series, trilogy, whatever you want to call it. Just a reminder, I'm going to generally throw this out now and I'll probably give it again later. This is a sequel. If you have not seen 3 or 4, I highly recommend it. Annotation above, I will drop another reminder right now as we get into the script. Hey guys, just a reminder that this is in fact a sequel. If you have not watched 3 or 4, I would highly recommend going back and watching those. I'll include a link up in the annotations. Thanks again. I am going to title The Suicide Squad 5, The Suicide Squad Shadow Dimension. We're going to open on Belle Reve. The camera pans through the cells as we hear Steely Dan's Do It Again play. We see a prison hall and hear shouting from prisoners who reach through the bars of their cells. We see Rick Flag walking down the hall in his classic yellow outfit, probably pretty close to the one in The Suicide Squad. He arrives at a cell and stops. The camera wheels around, and inside we can see Clue Master doing push-ups. Flag says, "Arthur Brown, you're up. We've got a mission for you." Clue Master looks up from the floor. "Is it that time already?" Flag says, "It is." We're going to cut to the surgery room. We see Clue Master get his bomb injected. Rick Flag says, "We've designated you as team leader. You'll have direct communication with Miss Waller. Your team is ready to go. We'll have your wheels up in 20. Clue Master says, "Just what is it that we're doing?" Rick Flag says, "An assassination of a high-ranking Russian official." Clue Master laughs. He says, "No, really." Flag says, "Wasn't a joke." Clue Master says, "You've got to be fucking kidding me." And Rick Flag says, "You'll be fine. The whole operation is planned to go smoothly. You've got some heavy hitters to watch your back, too." We're going to cut to the tarmac. We see Clue Master approaching the helicopter. The camera zooms out and we see Rick Flag watching it. Katana walks up and stands next to him. She says, "You coming?" And he goes, "Yeah." She starts to head towards the copter, but Rick Flag grabs her arm. He says, "Not that one." Katana turns and looks at him. "You're sending them to die?" she asks. And Flag says, "Part of Waller's plan. They're the distraction." Katana looks at him and says, "You're better than this, Rick." He looks away. He says, "It's the mission." Katana says, "Then this is my last. Don't let Waller turn you into something you're not. When I knew you, you were a hero. The man I knew would never send his own to their deaths." We're going to cut to the helicopter. We see Clue Master board the vehicle. Inside we see Nightshade, Plastique, Gentleman Ghost, Eel, and Atomic Skull. Of course, Eel, it looks like he does in the comic books. I'll flash a quick picture of him. I love his little face helmet thing with the red dot. I think it's super goofy. His mask is removed though. He's holding 2 one-gallon jugs of water. Clue Master says, "Looks like I'm gonna be your leader." Eel asks, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm Clue Master." Plastique and Gentleman Ghost laugh. Eel says, "That's a stupid name, bro." Clue Master says, "Great. What are you called, smart guy?" Eel says, "I'm the Eel." Atomic Skull looks over. Of course, he's got his kind of energy-laden skull. I think it's kind of a funny gag to have no one acknowledge it the whole time. I think that's pretty funny. Atomic Skull says, "What, like the fish?" Eel says, "Eel ain't a fish, man." Gentleman Ghost says, "Pretty sure it is." At this point, Clue Master has taken a seat and the helicopter is taking off. Eel says, "I'm pretty sure you're wrong." Plastique says, "I definitely think an eel is a fish." Atomic Skull says, "It has gills, right?" And Eel says, "My name is literally Eel. Trust me, guys. I know an eel ain't a fish. It's an eel." We're going to cut to Belle Reve. We see the workers doing their pre-mission gambling. It's exactly like in the Suicide Squad. They're throwing money around. Someone says, "Nightshade, what's her deal?" Assistant 2 says, "Amnesia, control shadows, we think." Assistant 1 says, "I'll put 20 on her to die last." Assistant 3 says, "Put me down for 400 and Eel to die first." Guy is a stupid name. Someone says, 400 and Eel, got it. Waller walks in and says, "You lot, they're about to hit the ground." They all scramble to their positions and hide what they're doing. We cut to the helicopter. We see Eel drinking one of his water jugs. He downs the whole thing and then starts on the next one. Plastic looks at him with horror and says, "Is that even safe? I'm pretty sure you could die from drinking that much water." Eel says, "No, dude, it's cool. I'm hydroloading." Gentleman Ghost says, "That's not a real thing." Eel finishes off the second gallon and lets out a little burp. "Sure it is." "Hey, have any of you ever done this before?" Atomic Skull says, "Sure, loads of times. This is my 4th. Eel asks, "Is it dangerous?" Atomic Skull says, "Only if you're stupid. Look, kid, I'm a real heavy hitter. Energy blast the whole 9 yards. Don't worry about it. Just stay behind me and this is going to go smoothly." We see a military guy step out from the front of the cockpit. He says, "We're over enemy airspace. We're going to drop in 5. Get your parachutes ready." Eel says, "What parachutes?" Military guy says, "Under your seat." Eel says, "No, I meant more like, why do we need them?"
The military guy says, to get to the ground. Eel says, oh, no, dude, no, I don't really do heights. The military guy says, today you do. We see them fish out their parachutes and begin to strap them on. Eel nervously puts his on and looks scared. Military guy says, it's going to be a tight window. You jump when I say go. He opens up the back of the helicopter, and we see only darkness and a few flickering lights below. Eel says, holy fuck, that's really high. I mean, how do we even deploy the chutes? Military guy says, it automatically deploys at the right altitude. Don't worry about it. Plastique says, and it works? Military guy says, most of the time, with a smile. Eel says, the fuck does that mean? A little alarm rings through the room. Military guy says, alright, that's it. Go, go, go. We see Plastique, Cluemaster, Gentleman Ghost, and Nightshade all bail out of the helicopter. Atomic Skull turns to Eel. He says, you gotta jump, asshole. Eel says, I can't do it, man. Fuck that. Military guy says, you go or we blow your bomb. Eel says, fuck. He closes his eyes. And as he does, Atomic Skull pushes him off the back of the helicopter while laughing. He jumps after. We follow Eel as he falls. He screams non-stop until his chute deploys. He looks down and we can see the tops of fir trees in the forest below. As he looks up, we can see Atomic Skull go flying past him, holding his arms up to slow his fall. He screams, my chute isn't deploying! We see him go flying straight into a tree at full speed. He's impaled on several branches, and one goes right through his flaming skull. The light of it immediately winks out, and we can see it's just a normal human head. Eel says, oh fuck. Gentleman Ghost says over the comm, did he just die? We see the remaining members land on the ground. They get untangled from their chutes and approach Atomic Skull's dangling corpse. Plastique says, I think he's dead. Eel says, yeah, I think you're right. Nightshade says, what are we gonna do? Gentleman Ghost says, I'd say leave him up there. I don't know how we're supposed to get him down. Nightshade said, no, I mean about the mission. He was supposed to be the big hitter. He said so. Waller chimes in over their intercoms. I've got a KIA readout on an Atomic Skull. Is the transponder broken? Cluemaster says, no, he's dead up in a tree. Gentleman Ghost says, it's more like the trees in him. Cluemaster waves him away and says, what do we do, Waller? Waller says, continue the mission. There's no turning back now. Cluemaster says, alright, we'll make do. He taps off his earpiece and gestures to the others. He says, look here. He pulls out a map from his bag and points to it. The compound we're raiding is a mile that way. We have to be quiet. We want to take down as many as we can without guards being alerted. Plastique says, I have a problem with that. I don't do quiet. I make explosions. Cluemaster says, then don't. Plastique rolls her eyes. Cluemaster says, what do the rest of you do? Eel just says, water. Cluemaster says, what, do you drink it? He goes, no, more like I move it and stuff. Gentleman Ghost says, I walk through walls, but I can only do it in short bursts. Cluemaster finally turns to Nightshade. He says, what about you? She says, well, I'm not exactly sure how it works, but I move the shadows. Cluemaster says, okay. Can I kill people? She says, probably. Cluemaster says, great. Then you're ready. Let's go. We hear the song Rasputin start to play as the camera zooms around to the front of the compound. We can see Russian lettering marking the front of it. Two guards are blocking the entrance to the compound through a fence. Eel taps Cluemaster in the shoulder and he starts to make a bunch of nonsense hand gestures. Cluemaster says, what? Eel says, I got him. Cluemaster whispers, are you sure? Eel's like, yeah, totally. He creeps forward slowly. Water begins to run from his mask as if he's spitting it out of his mouth. It forms balls in his hands. He thrusts them out, and the balls of water fly out and cover the guards' heads. They struggle, trying to squeeze and move at the water, but it won't come out. To no avail. The guards drown in the floating balls of water. Eel says, boom! The balls of water come back into his hands and then swirl back up into his mask, as if going back into his body. We see Plastique make a face as if it's disgusting. The squad moves up as the song continues to play. We see a search light move back and forth across the concrete area searching for people approaching. They move carefully, avoiding the spotlight. We see two guards standing out in the open. Cluemaster sneaks up on them before removing his knife. He slits one's throat before stabbing the other through the skull. We cut to mission command. We see Assistant 1 turn and say, Team 2 is in place and awaiting commands. Waller says, what is Team 1 doing? They're supposed to be drawing out the guards. Assistant 2 says, it looks like they're operating stealthy. Waller says, well, I put them together specifically to avoid that. This won't do. She taps the button and says, Task Force X, we picked up radio chatter. They know you're there. Go guns blazing. Cluemaster says, they're onto us. He pulls the rifle off his back and shoots a guard off one of the towers. Armed men begin to pour out of the building. Plastique rolls a golf ball from her bag towards the doorway. It explodes, making the guards turn into a pile of gore. Eel forms a ball of water at his feet, which he proceeds to ride. He zooms up to one of the guard towers and cuts a guard in two with a sword made of water. We see Gentleman Ghost walk up to two guards. The guards open fire on him, but the bullets pass through him. Suddenly he vanishes and becomes invisible. We can see his footprint in the snow. When the guard has to reload, Gentleman Ghost reappears in front of him. Says, boo. He stabs one and then slits the other's throat. A group of armed guards exit the compound. Cluemaster throws a knife, killing one. They open fire on him and Nightshade, and they have to move. They dive behind a concrete barrier. Cluemaster pulls a pistol and begins to fire from behind cover. He drops a guard. Nightshade moves her hands in a certain way, and a shadow portal opens up underneath two of the guards. They fall through it, and we see them reappear in the shadow of the upper floor of the building. They fall to their deaths and explode on the pavement below. Suddenly, a massive man appears in the doorway, shoving through the remaining guards. He has cybernetics running across his face and a minigun arm. It's KG Beast. He looks exactly like he does in the comic books. Plastique rolls out from behind cover with a couple of small marbles in her hand. But KG Beast is too quick. He fires his minigun towards her and riddles her with holes. Plastique drops the marbles and they roll right next to Gentleman Ghost. They explode, blowing his legs off. He starts to scream as he bleeds to death. He tries to crawl away in the snow, leaving behind a trail of blood. He quickly turns invisible, but again, his blood trail is clearly visible. KG Beast walks up to the end of the blood trail and begins to fire his minigun down, riddling Gentleman Ghost with bullets. As soon as he dies, his body reappears, completely dead and riddled with holes. Eel slides in on the back of his water bubble and lands next to Nightshade and Cluemaster behind the barrier. He has a bullet hole in his arm. He says, "There's way too many of them. We can't win." Cluemaster nods. He taps his ear. He says, "We're dropping like flies out here, Waller. We need to retreat." Waller taps in on her earpiece and says, "I'm afraid not. Try it and I will detonate your bombs." Cluemaster says, "Why? We're losing this. We're just gonna die for nothing." And Waller says, "Not for nothing. You were only the distraction." This is, of course, calling back to the last thing Cluemaster says to Waller before he kills her in the previous movie. Cluemaster says, "You can't do this." Waller says, "Actually, I can." We see Cluemaster slump where he is. Nightshade says, "What?" Cluemaster says, "She's not going to let us leave." Eel says, "What the fuck does that mean?" Cluemaster says, "She says we have to fight till we die. That we're just a distraction." Nightshade says, "Die." She begins to shake with fear. Bullets begin to hit the concrete around them. We see KG Beast look around. He notices the rest of the squad's hiding and he smiles. Eel says, "Fuck that. I'm not dying. I'm getting out of here." He forms a bubble of water and rides it away. Bullets land around him, but he escapes the compound. Waller calls into him on his earpiece and says, "You keep running and I'll blow your head right off your body. Try me." Eel says, "I'm not dying for you. You're full of shit." We're going to cut back to Belle Reve. We see Waller rolling her eyes as she unlocks the bomb panel. Waller says, "Turn around, Belline. That's an order." Eel says, "Fuck you." Waller says, "Well, I tried." She turns the key and presses the red button. We see Eel's head explode. His body flops into the snow in a jumbled heap. The snow turns right around him in a halo. Cluemaster, who was watching, says, "Fuck!" Minigun fire from KG Beast's arm begins to hit the concrete in front of them. It chips away at it until it's almost gone. So he says, in a strong Russian accent, "Come out, little Americans. We will take you alive if you let us." Nightshade looks around terrified. She says, "Are we going to die?" Cluemaster says, "No, you're going to be fine. I'll lay down fire. You take this and get to better cover." He hands her a rifle. She says, "I don't know how to use this." He says, "Point it and pull the trigger. Now go!" She takes it and begins to run for better cover. Cluemaster lays down covering fire, firing at the Russians. He kills one before he's hit in the chest with a bullet, but he keeps going, firing at them with bullets. He hits KG Beast, but the bullet bounces off his metal arm. Nightshade makes it to cover and starts to shoot the rifle as cover fire. We see Cluemaster limp towards the cover, but again he's hit in the shoulder. He keeps going. He's almost to safety when a bullet catches him through the lung. He falls to the floor, choking and sputtering. As he dies, he looks into Nightshade's eyes. She begins to panic again until we hear a faint voice. It whispers, "Nightshade," all sinister-like. Clumps of dark shadow begin to float around her like the fluid in a lava lamp. Her own shadow surrounds her, changing and contorting directions until it's entirely circular. We see her eyes glow purple. Shadows climb up her neck and bore into her flesh. We see it carefully remove the bomb before destroying it. A small trickle of blood runs down her neck. We cut to Belle Reve. Assistant 2 says, "That's it, we just lost Nightshade. We've got KIA readouts on everybody." Waller says, "Alright, swap me over to Team 2. We see the readouts on the screen change. The satellite turns and moves to watch the other side of the compound. We're going to cut to Russia. We see Rick Flag come over the hilltop, flanked by Harley Quinn, Katana, Boomerang, Blockbuster, Sportsmaster, and Clock King. Waller taps into his ear and says, "Alright, Flag, you've got the all clear. You have free range to take out the target." Flag says, "Will do, Waller." In the distance we hear gunfire. Katana looks towards it, and Flag notices. He says, "You're right. It's wrong. I can't stop it this time, but next time, I'll do what's right. I promise." Katana shakes her head and says, "I'm still leaving, Rick. I can't believe I didn't see it before, but this is wrong. All of it. We're meant for better." Sportsmaster waves his hand and says, "Hey, Flag, I got dibs on killing this prick. I've been itching to kill a government official. It's like a badge of honor." Harley Quinn laughs and says, "It's overrated. I've done it loads of times." The camera moves away and begins to travel across the compound until it reaches Nightshade. The shadows are continuing to pool around her. Armed men are closing in on either side of her and preparing for the kill. Shadows have completely coat her and she begins to laugh. A bullet rips into the concrete above her and she seems to remember where she is. She snarls. We see the shadows begin to change directions on all the armed men. They warp and move in strange ways. KG Beast notices. He looks at his men just in time to see the shadows climbing up them. They begin to be ripped apart. Their arms and legs and body parts are completely removed. Their heads are torn off their body, and they're left as piles of gore by the shadows, until only KG Beast remains. He says, "What the fuck?" He turns and runs into the building. The lights in the hall are swallowed by shadows one by one as KG Beast runs to try to stay in the light. He's caught in darkness. Only a single light remains on at the end of the hall. In its flickering light, we see Nightshade form her body from pure blackness. Her eyes glow purple. KGB says, "You don't scare me, American. I already killed your friends. You will die too." Nightshade laughs and says, "I'm not American. Sometimes when I've crossed over to a new world, I forget who I am for a time. It takes a little while for those pieces of me to cross over from the other plane. But I remember now. You should have just let us complete our mission." KGB fires his minigun at her. The bullets leave holes all through her body, but they're quickly mended by Shadow until she's whole once more. "Your antiquated technology will do nothing to stop me." Shadows begin to climb KGB's arms. They flow into his mouth as he tries to scream. We see his bones all break, splintering in wild direction. His body is ripped apart from the inside until it explodes into a shower of gore. Nightshade is covered in blood. It drips from her body. She begins to float off the ground, Shadows holding her up like a harness as they tendril to the wall. She begins to make her way back outside, floating. The shadowy tendrils launch out from her and begin to touch every single Suicide Squad member who died. They enter their mouths, and we see their eyes open as they gasp for air. Their eyes turn purple. We see Cluemaster begin to cough. The wounds on his chest are healing themselves, and the bullets fall out one by one. He sits up and looks confused. We see Plastique and Gentleman Ghost doing the same. Lastly, we see the shadows pull the bombs out of their neck and destroy them. Cluemaster says, I was dead. I died. I was dead." Nightshade appears from nothingness in front of him and caresses his chin. She says, "You did." She moves a hand up to touch his cheek. "But I brought you back, because there is work to be done." The others begin to scramble up awkwardly. They all look towards Eel's body. He's still on the ground and unmoving in a pool of blood. Plastique says, "What about him?" Nightshade says, "I'm afraid I need the brain to bring someone back. He's beyond my help now." Cluemaster says, "What work do we have to do?" Nightshade says, "I had forgotten my purpose for a time, but I remember now. How would you like revenge?" Cluemaster says, "I have a couple of people I want to kill, Rick Flag and Amanda Waller." Nightshade says, "Oh, you can have them, but you're thinking too small. We can tear it all down. The government that enslaved you, the society that rejected you. We can forge something better." Cluemaster says, "I don't know about taking down the government. That's a bit above my pay grade." A shadowy tendril reaches out and touches him. His eyes flash purple. He says, "I will do it. I will kill every one of them," in an almost robotic way. Gentleman Ghost's eyes begin to glow purple too. He says, "I'm in as well. I have been mistreated one too many times. It's about time they get haunted." Plastique turns and looks at them kind of awkwardly and says, how do you feel about Canada? Because all I want to do is destroy Quebec. If you feel like tearing down Quebec, then I'm in." Nightshade says, "Oh, I don't think you quite understood." Plastique's eyes turn purple. Nightshade says, "I did say everything. I'm going to rip this world apart at the seams." The camera moves into Nightshade's purple eyes, and we get the title drop alongside a horror-sounding sound cue. And I'm going to put more horror elements into this movie. It's sort of like Candlemaker in the third one. So Nightshade is pretty scary, as far as I've written there. The title slowly shifts into patterns matching Shade's duster. It moves across the screen until we pull out of Shade's duster. He's carrying a young girl, and shadows swallow the world around him. Strangely designed skyscrapers with bright colors are completely consumed by shadows. Tentacles made out of shadows are snagging people and pulling them into the darkness. We see text that says, "The Dimension Meta." The young girl in his arms begins to sob. She says, "Shade, it's going to get us." Shade says, "No, it won't. I've got you." Suddenly, a shadow snags the girl's leg and pulls her from his arms. She's jerked into the darkness. She screams, "Shade, help!" Before he can grab her, she vanishes into the darkness. We hear her screaming. It's raw and pained, but then there's nothing. Shadows climb the last of the building, toppling them to the ground. The darkness begins to surround Shade until he's completely trapped in pitch blackness. We hear a whisper from the dark. It's Nightshade. She says, "Shade." We see Shade wake up with fear. He's in the back of a van with Chemo, Flatline, Dorothy Spinner. The Hat is driving. Flatline says, Shade, Shade, we're here. He's stirred from his sleep and he looks over. The camera moves across the van, revealing palm trees surrounding a warehouse. We see text that says, the Florida Keys. Shade says, are the others here? And Flatline says, I don't think so. Shade says, call them. Flatline picks up a radio they've taped to the back of the car. She says, hey, are y'all here yet? We're going to cut to another car driving down the road. In it, we see Harley, Boomerang, Blockbuster, King Shark, and Ratcatcher. Bloodsport is driving the van. Harley is saying, wow, I can't believe I'm really in Florida. I've always wanted to come here. Boomerang bangs his head on the seat in front of him. We see Ratcatcher is sleeping, out cold in the front seat. Despite the shaking, she continues to sleep. Harley says, oh, you think we can get some real key lime pie? I love key lime pie. Boomerang says, Jesus fucking Christ, Harles, would you shut the fuck up? Harley says, what, Booma? What'd I do? And Boomerang says, it's been Florida this and Florida that for 50 fucking minutes, Harles. Harley says, what? I'm excited to be in Florida. He says, who the fuck would be happy to be in Florida? King Shark says, I like Florida. Boomerang says, shut the hell up, Nanawe. Bloodsport from the front seat yells, why don't you all shut the fuck up? I'm trying to drive. Suddenly we hear Flatline's message come through. Bloodsport picks up the intercom. He says, we're about 15 minutes behind. Got held up. Flatline says, we're going to go in. Doesn't seem to be anyone around. Place seems deserted. Bloodsport says, be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with. Their car passes an orange grove. Harley says, holy shit, they have fresh oranges too. Boomerang says, Bloodsport, buddy, right between my eyes. Just one bullet. Bloodsport lets out an exasperated sigh. We're going to cut to the warehouse. We see the Suicide Squad from the first car bail out. Chemo is in the same metal suit as always. Dorothy Spinner has her imaginary teddy bear riding on her shoulder. The Hat is in fact wearing his hat. Flatline stretches and says, so this is what vacation feels like. Chemo says, you don't usually raid a warehouse on vacation. She says, so what do you do? The Hat says, sleep and drink. Chemo says, or, see what's around, hang out with family. Flatline says, oh, we're family now, are we? She raises her eyebrows sarcastically. Chemo says, that's not what I meant. Flatline says, relax, I'm just teasing you. You make it too easy, though. She takes his hand and holds it. He smiles inside the suit. And I'll point out now that there's been a time skip. I think that's pretty clear. About 3 or 4 months. And in that time, Chemo and Flatline have started dating. I thought that was pretty clearly being set up in the 4th movie. They hang out a lot together in that movie. So just letting y'all know that's a development. We'll get more into it as the movie goes on. We're going to see Sergeant Stuffy on Dorothy's shoulder. He says, it's quiet. Too quiet. I don't like it. Just means Charlie's hiding in the jungle. Flatline says, or it means Bloodsport's tip is bad. Shade says, Nightshade is crafty. She will try any tactic to throw us off the scent. It would not be beyond her to send us a fake lead. Chemo says, we've been chasing our own tail for months with no sign of these guys. This is the best lead we've got. Even if it's fake, it's worth checking. Flatline says, I guess so. Dorothy says, it's just nice to get out of the house for a while, even if it is just to some gross warehouse. Chemo says, see? Dorothy is looking positively on the situation. The Hat says, this human air makes me wish I could drink. Flatline says, you're 3 months sober. Are you really going to throw that away over Florida? The Hat says, trust me, Florida's made many a man drink. I'm good, though. Chemo says, we're proud of you. It's funny, now that you're sober, I can actually stand to be around you. We're going to suddenly shift our view. We're seeing them through the scope of a rifle now. The camera pulls back and reveals Clock King on the roof. He's got a large sniper rifle. A voice comes through his radio. Plastique says, they're here. I can see them through my scope. I can detonate the explosives. Clock King says, not yet. This isn't all of them. We want them all. This is pointless if we only get half. Plastique says, you're in charge. We're going to cut to the inside of the warehouse. The squad moves through the empty halls of the building looking for anything. Chemo says, I feel like we always end up inside a warehouse. Flatline says, only that one time. Oh, and I guess this time. Chemo says, yeah, I guess it was only twice. Still weird it happened twice. They come to a large area in the center. Windows frame everything, giving clear line of sight to the inside of the building. In the center, we see a metal portal frame, just like the one from Suicide Squad 3. Flatline says, a lot of things are repeating themselves today. Chemo says, what is that? Flatline says, it's the thing that brought the evil versions of the Justice League in Texas. It's a portal maker. Dorothy says, yeah, it's the exact same, but why is it here? Shade looks concerned. He says, it makes portals, you say? To where? Flatline says, I don't know. Not here. Not this world. Shade says, you mean it allows one to access the multiverse? Flatline says, I guess so. Weird way of phrasing it. Shade says, we are in more danger than I thought. Far more. Flatline begins to approach the portal. She's looking at the electronics. She says, it's hooked up to some kind of remote switch. And Keyman says, that doesn't sound good. Just then the second group of squad members enter the room. Harley says, hey, it's that thing from Texas. Blockbuster says, Blockbuster. Shade says, this is a trap. We need to go now. She would not let us see this and live. Bloodsport says, what's got you all worked out? Suddenly we hear a gunshot. Blockbuster falls to the floor with a gunshot wound to the head. A second shot rings out and Flatline is hit. She falls to the floor. We see Clock King reloading the rifle. He lets out a curse. We hear Bloodsport say, sniper! They all hit whatever cover they can. King Shark blocks Ratcatcher and Dorothy from gunfire. Ratcatcher holds up her device and rats begin to swarm through the warehouse. They begin to blot out the windows with their bodies so that no one has a line of sight. We see Clock King. He folds up his gun and says, that damned oath stepped in front of my shot and now I've lost line of sight. Detonate the explosives, Plastique. Plastique says, gladly. She presses a trigger. We're going to cut back to the warehouse. We see Harley is crying over Blockbuster's body. He's not moving. She says, Blocky, what'd they do to you? Chemo is body blocking Flatline in his metal suit. We can see a bullet wound in her shoulder. She's bleeding pretty bad. Chemo says, are you okay? She says, not exactly, but I'm not dying yet. Chemo says, I'm going to get you out of here. Hat, we need your hat. The hat says, on it. He pulls his hat off his head and is about to throw it on the ground when a sudden explosion rocks the building. The hat is blown apart in the explosion. We can see his body parts leave his body. His hat vanishes in a plume of smoke and his head rolls to where the others are. Bloodsport is thrown back against the wall by the force of the blast. His mask shatters, but he's alive. Ratcatcher is knocked to the floor, but is unharmed. Chunks of rubble smash into Chemo's suit as he protects Flatline from sure death. We can see a few dents in the suit, but he's okay, and so is she. The dust settles, revealing a large hole in the side of the warehouse from the explosion. Boomerang says, we gotta get out of here. They all rush for the newly formed exit. Chemo helps Flatline and walks her out of the building. Blood is soaking her white shirt. We see Clock King watch them leave through his scope. He's lining up a finishing shot on Flatline. He's about to fire when a hand touches the barrel of his gun. He looks up and we see Nightshade. She smiles and says, I can handle it from here. I wish to do this personally. Call off the others. She vanishes. Clock King touches his earpiece. Pack it up. We're done. Plastique says, what do you mean? You're just gonna let them get away? He says, they're not getting away. Nightshade says she wanted to do this personally. Looks like we killed the drunk asshole, and now our work is done. We see the squad turn down an alleyway. A wall of solid shadow blocks their path. Shade walks up and touches it. He says, Nightshade is here. We need to move. The rest of the squad turns to run back the way they came. Shade turns to follow, but a wall of shadow appears, blocking his way. He turns around to check the other path, and Nightshade has appeared in front of him. She smiles and waves. We're going to cut to the squad. We see them being herded by walls until they come to a large square filled with tour shops. People fill the area everywhere. It's like a busy mall, sort of outdoor mall. They all stand perfectly still in the middle of actions as if they've been frozen. Each one of them has glowing purple eyes. Boomerang says, well, that's fucking creepy. All of the frozen tourists suddenly turn their heads to stare at the squad. Flatline says, yeah, I don't like that. The tourists begin to pick things up off the floor. Some pick up rocks and others pick up canes and pipes. They begin to turn towards the squad. Flatline reaches into her pocket and pulls out a knife rope. She begins to swing it. We still see the blood in her shoulder from where she's hit. Looks like it's gonna be a scrap. Bloodsport unlocks his bow arm and pulls it back. The little thing that shoots arrows that's on his sleeve in the movie. Bloodsport says, yeah, we're gonna cut to Shade. We see Nightshade standing in front of him. She says, Shade, I've missed you. Shade says, I can't say I feel the same. The shapes on the back of his duster begin swirling, and a dagger of color appears in his hand. Nightshade says, this doesn't have to come to pointless violence. Not yet. Shade says, I'm done listening to you. I know what you're playing at now. You want to open a portal to the shadow dimension, to bring your entire self into this world. Nightshade says, yes, just like you did all those years ago. I arranged the tip that led you here because I wanted you to understand what I've done. You've already lost, Shade. You and your followers don't have to die alongside this world. Join me. We could have it all again. I know you've missed me too. Shade says, no. I will stop at nothing to put an end to you, even if it kills me. And Nightshade says, are you sure this is the way you want this to go? I could kill them all in a matter of seconds. You know I could. The shadows pool around her, and they begin to spread across the walls like vines clinging up the sides of the buildings. She says, it would be so easy. Shade says, why are you so obsessed with me? Nightshade says, you wouldn't believe it possible of a being like me, but deep down I love you, Shade. Ever since you first found me with that strange little cloak of yours, you've stuck in my mind. Shade says, if you loved me, then stop. Let this world live. Nightshade sighs and says, it's tempting, but my nature is absolute. The shadow must spread to every corner of the universe. This is my purpose. You know it. Shade says, then kill me. Nightshade says, no. I think I'll spare you. Maybe time will change your heart, but you must learn a lesson. If you have others who care for you, you'll never come back to me. They have to go. Goodbye, Shade. I'll see you soon. Shade begins to pound on the shadow walls and screaming, no! But it's too late. She's gone, and the squad doesn't know what's coming. We see Bloodsport firing his arm bow at the zombies as they grow closer. He kills 3 before pulling out his chest pistol to kill 2 more. We see Flatline kill a couple with their knife rope. Chemo snags one by the head and squeezes it with his metal fist, popping it. We see Dorothy Spinner summon the Jolly Hanger, the creature made out of clothes hanger, who kills a few by hooking them and ripping them apart. In the background, we see King Shark eating one of the zombies slowly. We see Boomerang throw a boomerang. It takes the head off one tourist, slices the throat of another before coming back to his hand. He laughs and throws it once more. It sticks straight into the chest of a man, killing him. We see Harley kill one with a bat. Boomerang says, now this is a vacation, right, Harles? Harley says, we're killing civilians. How is that a vacation? Boomerang says, you're no fun. You really think key lime pie is better than this? Suddenly, Nightshade emerges from Boomerang's shadow like a creature. She contorts her body around until she's staring right at him. She wraps her hands around his head and rips his head clean off his body before he can react. The body falls to the floor headless. Nightshade lets the head sarcastically roll over her other hand. It bounces across the floor. Blood is sprayed across her body. She turns and says, who dies next? No one answers their question as they're too busy fighting off tourists. We see Bloodsport kill one with the nano sword that comes out of his back before throwing the blade into the skull of another. Nightshade turns to him and says, you seem interesting. How about I kill you next? She takes a step towards him and suddenly finds herself trapped inside a bubble of green energy. She pounds at it with anger, but it doesn't break. The camera pans around and we see Madame Xanadu and Katana. Madame Xanadu is carving runes in light into the air with a finger. She's, looks like her classic comic book version. She's the version that has a blindfold on, though. Like, she's lost her eyes. I like that version, personally, as far as aesthetics go. Madame Xanadu struggles to hold the shield. She says, she is strong. I won't be able to hold her long. Quickly, Katana, open the path. Katana nods and tosses an oblong ring onto the floor. It spins around, casting a portal into the air. On the other side, we see Shade. He was rescued first. Shade says, quickly, through here. The squad begins to make their way through the portal. Chemo helps Flatline through it. She's bleeding from her shoulder bad. We see tendrils of shadow begin to crack through the shield. Just as Madame Xanadu steps through the portal, Nightshade breaks free. She picks up the gold ring from the floor and the portal vanishes. They're now inside a stone hall of a castle. Strange metal lights run along the walls, as well as bronze tubes for piping. All the windows are sealed with wood and metal. Dorothy says, what is this place? Madame Xanadu says, it's called Scutarius. It is a magical realm concealed within your own. We will be safe here for now. Bloodsport says, I don't care where we are. What the fuck was that? Shade says, that is what we are fighting. Ratcatcher says, what is she? The way she moved around the shadows, it's not natural. Madame Xanadu says, her name was once Morgana Le Fay. She was a sorceress of immense skill, but she was consumed by her ambition. She thought black magic was the greatest power in the world. Morgana, in her lust for power, decided to tap the power directly from its source. She tried to summon the shadow from a dimension of pure darkness, the shadow dimension. Its power consumed her, and my order was forced to seal her away in that shadow dimension. Flatline says, Morgana Le Fay, like King Arthur and Merlin? Madame Xanadu says, the very same. They are quite real, after all. Flatline says, how do you know this? She smiles and says, because Morgana was once my sister. Chemo says, but that would make you over 1,000 years old. Madame Xanadu says, a bit rude to ask a woman her age, but yes, I am 1,226 years old. Harley says, I don't care who the Shadow Lady is to you. She killed my friends, so I'm gonna kill her. Madame Xanadu turns to face her and says, you needn't worry, Harleen Quinzel. That creature stopped being Morgana a long time ago. She is just an avatar for the Shadow now. I would have no regrets putting her in the ground once and for all. Bloodsport says, and how do we kill her? And Madame Xanadu says, I don't know. Even in the time of the greatest magi, we can only seal her away, a measure which clearly proved ineffective. Shade says, I can do it. I don't know why, but she's afraid of me. I could sense it oozing off her. Madame Xanadu suddenly turns and says, I need time to think. Please make yourselves at home. I have all the comforts of the modern world. She gestures to where an old TV and VHS player sit. Madame Xanadu says, I will return with haste. Oh, and do not leave this castle. Skatarius is a dangerous place for those unprepared to brave it. She enters a room and shuts its wooden door behind her. Katana crouches down as if to guard the door. Flatline says, well, better find bandages and a movie. I get the feeling she's going to be in there for a while. We're going to cut to the Shadow Society complex that we saw at the after credit scene of the last movie. We see Lilith Clay trying to talk to Clock King, who sits on a couch. She says, think, Talkman. You know I'm right. It doesn't make sense. She's lying to us. She won't let me read her future. And what I can sense is all in flux. Clock King says, I don't care. Lilith says, you should. I think she's going to do something terrible. More than she's told us. We have to warn somebody. Clock King says, and why would I help you? I need her. She's the only one who can bring my sister back. Lilith says, then why hasn't she? It's been months, Talkman. She's done nothing but build these portals, and she won't say for what. You can't tell me that there isn't something off about it. Clock King says, maybe you don't understand. I would do anything for my sister. She was innocent in this world. I will not betray Nightshade, Lilith. I like you, so don't do anything foolish. She is dangerous. Lilith Clay storms off. We're gonna cut to later. We see her sneaking through the building. She reaches an office and begins to look through a computer. She pulls up a map with a few red dots and some schematics. She looks over then and puts a hand to her mouth. We see her quickly email them to someone, but we can't see who. She looks up from the computer and Nightshade is standing there smiling. It's not a normal smile. There's something sinister about it. Lilith says, oh, Nightshade. I was just looking something up. Nightshade says, you've betrayed me. Don't lie. It's unbecoming of us. Why? I thought you believed in the message. Lilith says, I do, to an extent. I know you're not telling me the whole truth. You're lying to us, and you won't let me read your future. Nightshade says, oh, foolish girl, I am lying to you. But if you want to read my future, go on. Read it. See what I will do to you and to your world. Nightshade holds out a hand sinisterly. Lilith Clay reaches out a shaking hand and takes it. Her eyes begin to grow wide with terror. They go stark white as she sees the future. We hear her screaming in horror. She keeps screaming and weeping until at last she slumps to the floor, a blubbering mess. She says, evil, you can't, oh God. Nightshade says, I can, and I will. We see Nightshade leading the petrified Lilith Clay through the halls by the hand. They pass Clock King. Lilith is mumbling. She says, lies. The brain. She needs it's the shadow. It's coming. Clock King says, what's happened to her? And Nightshade says, she saw something she wasn't ready for. I'm going to take her to her room so she can sleep it off. Nothing you should be worried about. Nightshade and Lilith move down the hall as Clock King watches nervously. We see his face turn to a frown. We're going to cut back to the squad in the castle. We see a bunch of VHS tapes spread across the floor. We see a copy of the movie Ghost removed from its sleeve. Chemo and Flatline are watching the movie. It's the famous scene with the clay pot. Flatline says, I've seen this one before. Not really that accurate on how ghosts work. Chemo says, well, you would know. Flatline flops onto her back. The song Unchained Melody by the Righteous Brothers moves from the movie scene to the actual scene of our movie, playing over their dialogue. She says, as if it was a thought that came out of nowhere, have you ever thought about what it would be like to be normal? Chemo says, normal? What would that even be like for us? Flatline says, I don't know. I could stop talking to the dead. Avoid cemeteries and stuff. And we could find a cure for you. You could leave that suit and be free. We could hold hands and touch without the metal in the way. Chemo nods and says, I'd like that. Normal. Maybe we could buy a house. She says, yeah, a real boring one, somewhere out in the suburbs. Chemo says, somewhere normal, like Ohio or Indiana. Flatline says, well, maybe not that normal. I'm thinking more New England on the ocean. We could get married, maybe even have kids. Just one or two. Chemo says, yeah, name them something plain, like Mark or Mary. Flatline raises her eyebrows and says, what about Amanda? Chemo says, I don't think so. The only Amanda I ever knew was a stone cold bitch. Flatline says, literally now. They both laugh. Flatline says, I want to work a 9 to 5 at an office, gossip over the water cooler, the whole thing. I've never actually had a job. Chemo nods and says, I'd like to stay with the kids, watch them grow up, cook them lunch. I was always good with kids. Flatline says, a stay-at-home dad, progressive. Chemo says, I try. Flatline says, we would be happy. And Chemo says, yeah, you almost had me believing it could happen. Flatline turns and looks at him. She says, it doesn't have to be a joke. We could do it. we could live like average people. Kima says, come on, Nakia. It's a good dream, but I don't think we'll ever get there. Look at me. Flatline says, we will. Think about all the magic we've seen today alone. Maybe the supernatural is the way to fix you. Let's make a promise. She puts out her hand and says, whenever this is over, we're going to be normal, no matter what it takes. Just like every other person we see on the street. Kima nods his head and says, okay. He takes her hand. Normal. I can imagine that. The camera pans over to reveal that King Shark is standing next to them. King Shark says, I want to be normal. Kima says, oh, Jesus, you startled me. Yeah, you can be normal too. King Shark says, I'm normal now. Good. He walks away, trying his best to act like a normal person. Kima and Flatline both look at each other and laugh. And that's where I'm going to end the first act. Pretty good. We got quite a few deaths. I know a couple of these might make some of y'all upset, but whatever. All right, I'm going into the outro now.
All right, that's it. Yeah, I killed Boomerang again. That's right. All you Boomerang fans out there cried because this time the Boomerang isn't coming back because he got blowed up or his head got ripped off or something. I don't know. I don't read my own scripts. All right, what do you guys want? And if you guys dislike it, let me know below. I want to feed off your anger. I'm actually, it's what gives me the source of my power and allows me to sustain myself. So, that's nice. If you guys have any predictions about what's going to happen next or where my story's going or, general death predictions, go ahead and let me know below. If you have any thoughts at all, let me know. We do have a Discord. If you want to discuss it with the other fans there, you're welcome to do so. I'm going to include a link in the description and in the comments, so you can go down there and find that. Beyond that, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. If you're looking for something else to watch in the interim, I've got Thunderbolts here and Deadlands over here. Alright, I'll see y'all next time.